Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. My name is Brent Drumm. You're here with Parker Thune, and we are here to talk Oklahoma recruiting, Oklahoma spring ball. 75,360 of you guys showed up to that game this past Saturday in what was a kind of a national phenomenon for everybody that got to see Oklahoma fans put on a show, and not just the football team, but the fans put on the show because they were there to watch Baker Mayfield's statue get unveiled and also see Brent Venables' program get unveiled to the rest of the nation. Something that the media that we got to see throughout because practices were open for the most part, at least for a good hour or so, a couple of times a week. And you guys finally got to see what we saw, and that is a program that is together on the rise and has some fire behind it right now. So we'll see what comes of that as the 2022 season gets closer and games actually get to be played on the field and not just in a spring game scrimmage. So we'll see all that. We're here to talk all that recruiting, a bunch of big visitors this past weekend. You got Derek LeBlanc. You have obviously 4-star, 5-star, whatever you want to call him. Defensive lineman Derek LeBlanc was in town. 4-star offensive lineman and his best friend Peyton Kirkland was in town from Orlando, Florida. Jacoby Johnson from Mustang. Norman CCS Community Christian edge rusher, 4-star, top 50 player in the country. By Job was in town. There was 5-star edge rusher Colin Simmons was in town. A host of visitors in Norman, 5-star quarterback from Allen, 2024. Michael Hawkins Jr. Zena Umeazulu, Parker. It was a who's who as far as recruiting goes. They were in town, and a who's who if you were a former player. They were in town as well to watch Baker Mayfield statue get unveiled. What a weekend it was for Oklahoma Sooners and their fans to partake in. Parker, how you doing? What did you think of that weekend? 3 things off the top of your head real quick of what that weekend meant, not just for Sooner fans, but to the program.
Well, about the only thing missing on Saturday was Billy Sims yelling boomer, right, Brandon?
That's
everything
right. That's
else
true.
went about as swimmingly as you could have drawn it up. You could not have storyboarded a better spring game for Oklahoma than the one that they had on Saturday. And if I had to pick 3 things that really stood out to me, one I would say would be the tempo that Jeff Lebby maintained with this offense. And if they can play efficiently at that tempo come the fall, that Oklahoma offense is going to give defenses some problems, because as several of the quarterback prospects who were in attendance noted to me when we caught up with them after the fact, defenses can't substitute at that speed. And not only can they not substitute, but it's difficult to relay the calls, difficult, obviously, to get everybody in position to run the next play. And you are decidedly putting yourself on the offensive, and you are becoming the aggressor if you're running offense effectively at that type of a tempo. So if that's the new look Oklahoma offense under Jeff Lebby that we're going to see this fall, and it is as efficient as it is fast, then this Oklahoma offense might not take the step down that I think most people are counting on. I think most people take a look at the fact that Lincoln Riley's out the door, headed to Los Angeles. Well, okay, there's no way Oklahoma's offense is going to be as good in 2022 as it has been the 6-7 years previously. I don't know if that's the case. It's certainly going to look different, and the dynamic will be different. The scheme will be different. The splits will be different. But I think in an overall production type of sense, I don't know if things are going to change all that much offensively for Oklahoma. And that's not to say I'm drinking all the Kool-Aid yet, but I think there's reason to believe that this Oklahoma offense could be problematic for some defenses. I think in addition to that, obviously the way that Brent Venables grips this entire fan base and holds everybody on the edge of their seat with every single word he says, that stands out to everybody, not just me. That stands out to the recruits. That stands out to fans. Everybody looks at Brent Venables as the clear leader of this program, and they are stoked for the direction that he's taking Oklahoma football. There is more juice within this program, surrounding this program, than there has been in a long, long time. And in hindsight, Brand, it's hard to tell whether things had actually gotten a little bit stale under Lincoln Riley, or if things are just that night and day different that it only seems that way in retrospect. But I will say that the energy that Venables has injected into the program is very significant. And what's also significant is to see so many of his players and his assistants, looking at you, Miguel Chavis, embrace his same enthusiasm for Oklahoma football. So that is thing 2 for me. Thing 3, and again, this is
Are you wearing these shirts to like point to each other while you do the thing 1, thing 2, thing 3 thing? Is that what's going on here?
No, but I'd say the third thing that really stands out, and it's a very surface level observation. So I'm sure Gerald the troll is going to be in the chat talking about how I say so much without ever actually saying anything, but that's a sacrifice I have to make here. The attendance, astronomical and hugely consequential. Oklahoma had the largest spring game crowd in the entire country. Brandon, nobody was counting on that. They figured, okay, yeah, it'll be a live, rowdy day in Norman, Oklahoma at Owen Field. But to think that the Sooners were going to have easily the most impressive spring game environment of any organization across the country, for the fans to speak that loudly and that definitively in their first real opportunity to actively respond in the wake of everything that went down on November 28th and in the immediate aftermath, that spoke volumes for this program. And that spoke volumes for the state of Oklahoma, for all of the stakeholders, everyone who is invested in the future of Oklahoma football. Oklahoma made a statement across the national spectrum on Saturday.
They did. I was, listening to Josh Pate talk about it, and he kind of mocked, the rest of the nation where, well, that's the only thing there is to do in Oklahoma is go to a spring game. That's why they have so many people there. Look, if that was the case, first off, that pisses me off. Number one, if they said that about Oklahoma State, I don't care. Tulsa, it doesn't matter. That would piss me off just because I'm an Oklahoman, and by nature, I'm going to come out defensive of just the state in general. And the dumbasses that come out and say, well, there's nothing to do at Oklahoma. There's OU fans don't have it. The dumbasses don't even realize where Norman's located. That shows you how little they know. It's in a metropolitan of over 1.5 million people, and they can't figure that out, that there's a lot to do. There's a damn NBA team now. I know they're not in the playoffs, but normally NBA teams aren't in cities where there's nothing to do. I'm just throwing that out there. They're not in small cities. So that is the stupidest thing ever. People don't realize Norman is literally 20 minutes from downtown Oklahoma City. There's plenty to do for these folks. They chose to go because they love the university, and college football, as you eloquently put it on our last podcast, goes God, family, football in the state of Oklahoma. And sometimes
not necessarily in that order.
Not necessarily in that order. And, some people, it goes family, football, God. Some people, it goes football, God, family. It goes a variety of ways for Oklahomans, but football's always in the top 3, and that's how it is. And if they can't realize that, then they're as, what do the people call them? They're either noobs or they're
casuals.
The casual fan that don't understand Oklahomans at all, or Texans for that matter, because I would venture to bet that half of those people that were there on Saturday drove up from Dallas, Fort Worth, the same metropolitan area that I'm in right now. If you can't tell, I'm in a hotel room, and I literally walked through the door as we had to start this. So I'm all discombobulated to just start from there. This is not my normal setup, but it's just, if half the attendance is probably from Texas and the DFW area from that matter. And I know people that flew in from Florida. I knew people that flew in from California. I knew people that drove down from Colorado. There was a variety of things that were going on there this weekend. And that was number one for me, was obviously the attendance was just, it was unbelievable. 75,360. It was a record for Oklahoma. It was the most in the nation. It beat the national champs, who had 68,000 at Georgia. And there was somebody in our comments of our podcast that said on YouTube, that said something of the matter like, oh, well, he was mocking you. No, the point was, if you're beating the champs, that's impressive. 68,000 people for a spring game, no matter what, is impressive. To have 75,000 is out of this world. And then obviously you had, and people are like, oh, well, they mocked USC. They said that's because USC just kind of threw a number out there and decided 33,000 was the number they were going to roll with. And everybody that has any sort of common sense knows that those pictures didn't show 33,000 fans. But we're not going to get into that. That's nothing. That's neither here nor there. Number two, I thought was really cool was, and Josh Pate touched on it again, the balance. The balance. There was great defensive plays and there was great offensive plays. Normally, it was one or the other. There was no balance with the predecessors. You would have really windy days, a la Kyler Murray's spring game, where it was just defense dominated, but the defense dominated because it was so windy they couldn't get anything going, and Lincoln Riley didn't want to show anything. And this one, they showed stuff a little bit, but they were still, I would say vanilla enough. They were 100% vanilla. I'm going to put that. They were vanilla, but they kept the pace, and playmakers made big plays. And it wasn't just on the offensive side that happened. Playmakers were making plays on the defensive side of the ball. You had an interception, and that wasn't an easy interception. That was a back shoulder throw that Harmon just jumped. Like, he just jumped it. And then obviously you had Harrington with the fumble, the caused fumble with Ethan Downs recovering, and Ethan Downs obviously chasing the ball down and causing a fumble on another play. And those are the type of things that you want to see, and gives people from across the nation. Yes, it's a spring game, but you get to see a spatter of talent all over the field, and not necessarily all your starters on one team. It's not one versus ones. It's everybody versus everybody. And you had kind of an all-time quarterback. And I thought the playmakers made plays. And I think that's something you want to see. We didn't get to see a lot of that with the predecessor. It was just offense or defense. There wasn't a balance. Number three, you said it really well, Parker. Venables kind of has OU fans by yo-yo. They kind of do it up, down, how do you want us to go, coach? And I think that's what you need to take the program to the next level. The fans are bought in now. They believe. His WWE speeches at midfield they energized everybody. They energized the media, they energized the fans, they energized the players, they energized the recruits. And that's something you normally don't see at a spring game. And I thought that was probably one of the cooler aspects of it all, because when he got up and spoke before anything happened, it set the tone for the whole day. Naming all the number one programs inside the athletic department, talking about what they're going to do, getting the fans hyped, and kind of getting the alumni, the former greats, getting them hyped up and getting them behind the program, or where it was going with that family picture, as he called it. Pictures worth 1,000 words. And I thought all that was key to set that tone for that day, and it just went on from there. So it was a win-win, a whole day, A+ for the whole day, a B+ for the performance of the team across the board. It was just a great day for Oklahoma football. Parker, recruiting wise, let's talk about that, because I think that's what everybody wants to talk about. They want to hear how that affected. Obviously, we know there's a commitment out there dangling. It should be announced at some point this week, potentially. There's a new way that they're going to announce the commits. It's not going to be just via edits. It's going to be more via videos and stuff like that. So we'll see how that takes place moving forward. There for y'all, little VIP nugget on this YouTube live. How do you think everything went? I mean, we both talked to numerous people. I've got my notes coming tomorrow. I've got notes of where the coaches are out traveling. We'll talk about that later on as well. But go ahead. How do you see, or how did you see that the whole day going for Oklahoma on the recruiting trail?
Well, the environment spoke volumes, and, put yourself in the shoes of a 16, 17-year-old kid, Brandon. What do you want at the next level? Sure, to a certain degree, maybe you want that NIL bag. Maybe you want a really prestigious program. Maybe you want to play with your friends and all end up at the same school. But more than anything else, as you prepare to make that transition from adolescence to adulthood, you want to feel valued. You want to feel loved. You want to feel at home. And nothing says we value you, we love you, this is home, quite like 75,000 raucous fans packed into Owen Field for an intra-squad exhibition. So, needless to say, that more than anything else stood out to the vast majority of prospects that were in attendance on Saturday. And that, more than anything else, was the one thing that we heard cited as the biggest takeaway that they had, if you will, the thing that they would remember the most, the thing that would be indelibly seared into their brain from this experience at Oklahoma. And obviously, those of you that are VIPs on OUinsider.com saw some crystal ball predictions drop on Saturday night. Yeah, Oklahoma made some moves with several elite prospects from across the nation. And it's not just, don't just pay attention to the crystal balls either. Read those notes on OUinsider.com VIP. Read the quotes that these recruits gave on their way out the door as they all dispersed their homes from the Oklahoma visit. They had nothing but good things to say about the experience. And I think as much as they were gripped by the environment at Owen Field, the way that they were treated by the coaching staff stood out as well. And we know how much Brent Venables and his staff value relationships, right? Something we've talked about ad nauseum on this live series on the podcast on OUinsider.com. So that is obviously nothing new, nothing that comes as particularly revolutionary to this conversation. But when you combine that with the reality that, and everybody just got to witness Owen Field at near capacity for a spring game, this made a really, really strong impression across the entire board. And I posed this question to you, Brandon, on the podcast, and I want to rehash it here. What do you think are the odds that any of those prospects that visited Oklahoma on Saturday don't end up making a return trip to Oklahoma at some point? Because there were north of 100 players in attendance. I'd be hard pressed to believe more than 15 or 20% of them are done coming around in Norman.
Yeah,
you'd have to believe. You'd have to believe that the vast majority of them are going to be back at some point. And there are some that we talked to, Brandon, that said, yep, you know what? Not only am I definitely coming back in the future, but I've actually already booked my next visit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, prime example would be Peyton Kirkland, Derek LeBlanc, where they're already set up to return on June 1st. Ricardo LeBlanc, Derek's dad, who is probably watching this right now. So hello. We have to get that shout out every time we go, like, cause he actually asked me before I walked into the door, he was texting, hey, when's y'all's next thing? So, but they already set their flight up. They will be back on June the 1st, I think, 1st, 2nd, doesn't matter. But they're leaving the 5th. So they're going to spend several days on another unofficial. And same with Peyton Kirkland's coming back as well for the champion barbecue. So that's big for Oklahoma there. Same with, a lot of the guys that we spoke with. We expect Colin Simmons to return. I'm going to see him tomorrow, actually, at Duncanville. And I fully expect Oklahoma to be on hand as well at their spring practice, Duncanville spring practice tomorrow as well. Allen, I'm going to be going by Allen. I'm going to go by Crandall to see Samuel Omosigo. I mean, there's a lot that we're going to be doing for OU Insider VIPers, but those are the type of players that are already set up. Like, these are elite guys. Michael Hawkins, Zeno Umeozulu, like, these guys are going to return to Oklahoma, and not just in the summer, but they're going to return multiple times because they want to see where this program's at and, you know, where Venables is going to take it. They're bought in right now. And when you buy in, you keep returning. Does that mean all these players are going to end up at Oklahoma? No, it's going to be a battle to land Peyton Kirkland. It's going to be a battle to land Derek LeBlanc. I mean, you've got to fight the in-state programs to get those guys. So, but the fact that they keep returning shows there is I would say, more than an interest in where things are at Oklahoma. And they want to continue to check that out. They want to continue to go to these events. They want to grow closer to the players that are on campus, the former players, the coaches, and they want to see where things go before they make the decision, because they can go to those in-state programs a lot because they're right down the road. So the fact that they keep returning shows that Oklahoma's in a good spot for them, but I wouldn't sit there and say, you know, they lead or anything like that. I just say, look, it's going to be a battle, and Oklahoma's putting in a lot of work, and it's paying off with those type of players because those are elite guys. They're tops in the country at their positions. So, yeah, I agree with you. 15, 20% probably at most not return. I would probably say 80, 85%, 90% of the guys that were there on Saturday will at least return one more time to Oklahoma. More than likely, more than that, to be honest with you. So that was big, not just for 2023, but 24, 25, 26. Like, they're identifying players and bringing them in, even people we haven't heard about. We're seeing a lot of Kevin Sperry Jr., lots of 25 guys that are going to be they're going to be big targets for Oklahoma moving forward. So this is big. That weekend was big for years to come for Oklahoma, honestly.
I think it really sets the tone, not just for the rest of the big recruiting days that Oklahoma is going to have throughout the summer and into the fall, but now you have a standard that's been set. You have an expectation, because Oklahoma is going to do the exact same thing next year to a T, because they've got Kyler Murray's Heisman ceremony at the spring game. So in essence, the only difference between next year's spring game experience and this year's spring game experience is that it's going to be year 2 under Brent Venables and not year 1. So maybe there won't be as much of the proverbial new car smell around the program, but most everything in terms of the actual game day environment, you would be inclined to believe is going to be virtually the same.
Yeah. And, you know, there were players that weren't even on campus that took notice. And I got a little nugget I'm going to drop for our VIPers here tomorrow that they'll enjoy with a certain player that wasn't on campus, but took notice enough that I think things are moving very positively for OU for this player. And it's a player that might be committed elsewhere. So we'll see.
Yeah. Look at you, Brandon.
Yep. People are asking Kilgore, Tyler Turner. Again, Tyler Turner wasn't there. He's another player that took notice. You know, I'll actually have something on him as well here in the next 24, 48 hours as far as where he and Oklahoma stand. Kilgore loved it. Jalen Kilgore out of Tampa, the safety, long rangy player, said that he's definitely returning this summer, trying to dial in a Champion Barbecue visit return. So we'll see how that works out. But I think you're going to see Oklahoma make a surge. I'm telling everybody, June and July are going to be fun months for Sooners fans. I just have and it's nothing like I know definitively, but it's my gut is telling me with the Champion Barbecue, and that would be in the 5 to 6 month range of National Signing Day. So you're going to start seeing a lot of guys nail down decisions because they don't want to have to worry about that crap during their final season of football.
Very true.
So June and July, as the official visits really start to rock up, and they're going to ratchet it up, and people are going to be taking their visits, and they're going to be making decisions. I really wholeheartedly believe that from June 1st to July 31st, you're going to see, and I know this sounds very vague and really stupid to say, but you're going to see a vast change in how the chosen 23 class looks between now and then. And I'm not just saying that because it's a given. I'm saying that because I think you guys are going to like how it turns out. I think things are going to start moving in a big direction. Big names are going to start falling off the board, and there's going to be several that work in Oklahoma's favor at the end of the day.
I would say that over the course of those 2 months, you will need more than one hand to count the number of commitments that Oklahoma's.
Would agree. I agree. People are asking if Anthony Hill made it in. He did not. He actually took a couple of visits prior and took a weekend off for himself, I believe. I don't know 100% where he was. Raynaud, I asked people around because Raynaud told me specifically said, I'm going to visit Oklahoma. And he told me again on, I think it was Thursday. And then I haven't heard anything back from him. So I don't know. And then the people I talked to says that there's a couple of people who are like, yeah, I don't think I saw him, that type of deal. So we're still trying to confirm if he made it or not. So there's that. There's another pretty good question down there I saw earlier. Oh, David Hicks was in Oregon. He went to Oregon spring stuff. He promised them he was going to take a visit up there. I will stop by and talk with his father while I'm in town here again. So I hope to have another good nugget for you guys on OU Insider where that stands. But they're going to visit OU again. Like, he's already told me that numerous times. Like, we're going to visit OU several times before a decision's made. They're not going to make a decision until January. So you guys have plenty of time to sit there and dwell over David Hicks Jr. And we'll have plenty of those questions on the OU Insider VIP board for months to come, guaranteed. Parker did on the podcast kind of talk about your top 3 standouts. We think we named 5 on the podcast, but let's do top 3 standouts during the spring game. Top 3 standouts.
Yeah, that's tough if you're going to narrow it down to 3. Okay, I'll pick one from each.
You can go 4 if you want to.
No, you know what? I'll pick one from each unit. I'll do that. I'll say I know Javonte Barnes is Turk on special teams. He had one of the best punts I've ever seen. My goodness.
Yeah.
Oh wow. I mean, that looked like it had been shot out of a jugs machine directly to the 1 yard line. So yes, Michael Turk might be Oklahoma's best player. That may actually be true. But offensively, I know Javonte Barnes' numbers don't jump off the page, but I do think that's more of a credit to Oklahoma's defense and the way that they've improved as far as tackling. Javonte Barnes is a guy that has home run speed, right? We know this much. We've seen the tape. Mm-hmm. And so you can't let a guy like that get too much space, because once he does, he can wave goodbye. Right. And so I think with a heightened awareness of that, probably with some of what they've seen from Javonte Barnes throughout spring practice, the Sooners made a very concerted effort, it seemed, on the defensive side of the ball to keep Javonte Barnes within the tackle box. And so all of the yards that he accrued, which were 60 on 17 carries, for the most part, that came from between the tackles running. He had to go straight downhill, and he had to go through somebody, or he had to make somebody miss in the phone booth. And so I was really impressed with what I saw from him. Shout out to Tawi Walker as well, who was outstanding. Barnes, in my eyes, flashed just a little bit more just because I think he's more physically gifted than Walker is. But I think Walker's in position to be that third back right now. And as we've seen in years past at Oklahoma, regardless of who the offensive coordinator is, being the third back, looking at the likes of Moses Madu and Trey Sermon and Ramondre Stevenson back in 2019, there's a little bit of value to be had there. So, but Barnes is probably my offensive standout if I had to pick one. Defensively, man, I'm tempted to go with Ethan Downs, our collective man crush here on OU Insider Live, but I got to give it up to Marcus Stripling, man. 3 sacks, or not? Was it 2? It was 3 sacks. He had 3 sacks on Saturday, 5 tackles, 4 of them for loss. The dude just manhandled people up front. I mean, granted, say what you will about him going up against the second team offensive line for much of it. I understand that Aaron Parks probably doesn't inspire a whole lot of confidence as far as what he's ultimately going to be at Oklahoma. He's no higher than second string right now, but to see the way that Marcus Stripling just absolutely dominated all comers up front was remarkable.
Yep.
And that's a guy, and we've seen flashes. We've seen flashes over his 3 seasons in Oklahoma. This is somebody that time after time, when given the opportunity, has made some really disruptive plays in the backfield. But because of the position that he plays and the fact that Nick Bonito over the last 2 seasons has been the most productive edge rusher in the nation as far as pressure rate and all the other advanced metrics, Marcus Stripling hasn't had much of a chance to really strut his stuff. And so now that Bonito is NFL bound, and especially now that Brent Venables is in town, I think Stripling could come out reinvigorated in the fall, especially because, and I don't think it's any particular secret, he had 1 foot out the door at the end of last season. He was just about done at Oklahoma. And it was Venables' hiring that helped him recapture his faith in the program and his faith that he was in the right spot for his long-term future and potential. And I think Stripling has the chance to lead this team in sacks, because I do think as far as pure pass rushing ability, he's probably the most talented guy on Oklahoma's roster. Now, in terms of playing the overall position, I think Ethan Downs has the highest ceiling, and I think he's going to be the best of the bunch. But as far as his sheer ability to rush the passer, I don't think there's anybody on Oklahoma's roster that can hold a candle to Marcus Stripling. And I've been bullish on him each of the last 2 years. Like I said, he just really hasn't had much of an opportunity to really show what he's got in the tank. And so in 2022, and what you'd imagine would be an increased role in this defense, I think he has the opportunity to explode the way we saw Obo Okoronkwo explode in 2016. Remember, he hadn't done much of anything up to that point. And you can say the same about Isaiah Thomas in 2020. Late bloomers on Oklahoma's defensive line are not unprecedented. And Marcus Stripling could be next in that lineage.
No, I agree. You named Javonte Barnes on offense. I think we both, let's just get this out of the way. I think we both can just go ahead and say Michael Turk on special teams. I think that's a given, like 100% a given. That was the damnedest punt I've ever seen in my life. And to this day, I've got nothing to, like, I've never seen something spiral on its end like that and just roll, and not just roll out of bounds, but in a straight line. Like we went like a 90-degree, like just
like I said, when it
1
looked,
foot line.
when I said awesome. It looked like that thing was shot out of a jugs machine, that's literally exactly what it looked like.
Yeah, it's Wow. I mean, you can go watch that on YouTube if you go watch the playback. It's pretty cool. Pretty
He's going to
cool.
be
It's one of the cool.
very successful at the next level.
Yes, he is. He might be one of the best punters I've ever seen. And you know, that's crazy to say because the best punter in the NFL hails from Oklahoma and Trey Wisner. So it's like they could have back-to-back, you know, some of the best punters in the league. I know there's others out there that some may consider better than Trey Wisner. He's up there. Like he's up there as one of the top 2 or 3 punters in the league. So, I mean, Oklahoma could be punter you. I mean, there you go. Punter, special teams you, baby. So, but seriously, yeah, no, people want us to name Dillon Gabriel. I think that's an easy cop out on the offensive side of the ball. It's just skip Dillon Gabriel. You know, when you've got Marvin Mims and just like you stated, you know, Javonte Barnes, Theo Weiss made some big plays. Jalil Farouk made some big plays. Taway Walker made some big plays, obviously, you know, but I'm going to go with Mims as the guy. Just and because some of the plays that he made were just they were different. You know, he got open a lot. I will say the best catching play obviously was Jen Gibson's 95-yarder, but second had to be Theo Weiss's when Dillon Gabriel rolled to his left to get out of pressure and ended up lofting it over the head of everybody. Not everybody, lofting it over the head of, I think it was Kenai Walker, actually, that was chasing him down. And you know what? People are going to sit there and say, well, that was a bad play by Kenai. It wasn't a bad play. Kenai Walker did exactly what he's supposed to do. In that situation, quarterback rolls out, cornerback is supposed to roll down, safety is supposed to roll back over the top. So whoever had that backside safety was supposed to roll back over the top and cover that deep route. That's football 101. And it didn't happen on that play. And those are the mental breakdowns that you're going to have in a spring game like that. But again, it showed the balance. I loved it. It showed the balance of the team. Defensively, would you name Marcus Stripling? I named, obviously, on the podcast, I went with Ethan Downs. I'm still going to go with Ethan Downs because I thought he got pressure in the backfield quite a bit, number one. Number two, whenever he made a tackle, things seemed to happen. And he always seemed to be where the ball was at the whole time he was in there. And he plays with such a passion. I think him and Miguel Chavis are just one and the same as far as the person they are on the field. They're both nutty people. And I love Ethan. I love his dad, Nate. I've known Nate for a long time. This is a long time. But I'll tell you this, like Ethan is a quiet guy off the field, but he is a nutcase on the field. And he's been that way his whole life. And that's just who he is. But at the same time, he's got like that, a lot of that energy. He's just that nice guy. And he's very faith driven. And you can see that. And if you don't know about that and you want to go watch how he answers questions and then go watch Miguel Chavis. They're very similar. Like he is a young Miguel Chavis in the making right now. And they're both former defensive. Well, obviously Chavis is a former defensive end. Downs is a defensive end now, and he's being coached by Chavis. So I think it was perfect timing that all that kind of encapsulated and happened at Oklahoma for some of these guys. Marcus Stripling in particular, because he's like you said, just blossomed. And there were a lot of people that wanted him out of the program last year. Like it was like there were things that were going on that he just couldn't get right maturity wise. And he has shaped up. Venables said as much during the presser. He said, we're watching this dude grow up in front of our eyes right now and change and become a great ball player. They weren't saying that part of spring. This all happened within the last 10 practices. And the dude, it is unbelievable. People will write off these kids, coaches included, they'll write them off. And I think if there wasn't a change in staff, you're not seeing Marcus Stripling do this. Would you agree with that, Parker? Because it just becomes the same voice. When there's a different voice, sometimes they can connect to a kid that another coach can't. And it's not to say that other coach isn't great, because OU had a great defensive end coach, an edge rush coach before that, one of the best in the country, not even without question, and Coach Kane. But it's just different voices sometimes work.
I mean, if the old coaching staff were still in place in Norman, Oklahoma, Marcus Stripling would not be wearing the Oklahoma uniform. He would be
it's
departed
true.
from the
It's
program.
true.
He would have been in the transfer portal pretty soon thereafter, once that 2021 season ended, if there hadn't been the turnover on the coaching staff. That was a guy, and you can throw Jaden Davis in that conversation as well, along with a couple others. Those were guys that stuck around because of the coaching change.
Yes. Yeah. Marvin Mims is another one. He opened story not very many people know. OU's playing Florida in basketball, and I took my kids down. I didn't credential anything. My kids wanted to go to the game, so I took them to the game. We sat right behind Florida's bench, and I'm walking up to take our kids to the concession stand at halftime, and Marvin's walking down the steps and stops me to talk, and he wanted to get some things off his chest. So we talked. Nothing I ever reported, just literally talking, because I've known the kid for a long time. And he said, I'm happy with the coaching change because it opens the door up for a lot of things to change with a lot of different people. And he was talking about himself in a roundabout way. And I asked him, I said, I know you've seen the rumors of the transfer portal and all that. He said, yeah, but I'm sticking around right now because I want to see how this goes. And he was asked after the spring game on Saturday evening when we got to talk to him, which he came in on his own, which I thought was one of the funniest. Did you hear about that, Parker? He came in on his own. He came in on his own. Like, we were supposed to get, so we got Baker and we were waiting on Venables. Marvin walks in and he looks over at us, like in the red room, looks down and he goes, is it my turn? And we were like, sure. And nobody had okayed it for him to do it. He goes, well, I'm okaying myself. Let's get this over with. So he just started doing his own interview at the podium. Instead of doing it by where they had like the breakouts with all the players, he did Marvin Mims did podium. And then we're only supposed to have Venables, Baker, and Dylan Gabriel at the podium. Marvin Mims sets himself up at the podium because he was tired of waiting. So I thought that was pretty funny. But yeah, he was asked, what do we do? Like, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to stick around now? There has been rumors, but he goes, I'm not going anywhere. I love what's going on with this program. I've bought into it. Everybody's bought into this. And then Venables talked about, and I had a recruit talk to me about this actually. And it was something Venables brought up during the presser. At halftime, and the fans that you guys watching this, I think it's pretty cool. At halftime, they were coming out, and you probably saw number 8 and number 17 come out later than everybody else. Well, the reason is because they stayed back to clean up the locker room to make it pristine for when they came back in after the game, after the spring game. They are that adamant on perfection, whether it's cleaning up the locker room, whether it's and being leaders, that they stayed back and cleaned up the whole locker room while everybody else went out. They knew they weren't going to play, number one. They wouldn't have done that, but that's the leadership that they brought. That's how much Marvin has bought into this program now. And I don't think with that old staff, that's not happening with him. And obviously he's mature. He was a very mature kid. He was going to do all the right things and say all the right things, but he wasn't this vocal. He wasn't this adamant about the program the way he is now. And that's due to the coaching changes. Like you said, Parker, there's a lot of kids on this team that this coaching change changed the whole complexion of their career and where they're going to end up playing. Unfortunately, Cody Jackson isn't one of those, and we can talk about that, which I know a lot of people are surprised by that, but we weren't. The timing, I was surprised by the timing of it, weren't you? I thought he might stick around a little bit longer, but there was always that buzz that he may be on his way out.
Yeah, it's tough to reconcile with, because you knew there was going to be an odd man out in the wide receiver room. You knew somebody was going to hit the portal. We didn't know exactly who it was going to be, but you kind of looked at those guys that were further down the depth chart and is maybe the more likely candidates to go portaling. And I think what's unfortunate about the Cody Jackson situation is that he'd been all OU for a long, long time. He committed to the Sooners before his sophomore year of high school was over with. So
Yeah,
that was a guy that, like I said, all OU and had been for a long, long time. And I kind of feel the same way about Cody Jackson as I did about Jaden Hazelwood, not necessarily anything that he did that was wrong. It wasn't necessarily not a good fit for him at Oklahoma. None of that was necessarily at play. It was just, there came a time where there needed to be a change of scenery for his own good. And with everything he went through last year, health-wise, and given the fact that Jaden Gibson performed the way he did on Saturday, and you saw the other wideouts make some big plays, Jalil Farouk continues to climb the depth chart. It just became pretty clear that Cody Jackson was going to have to wait quite a while if he ever wanted to make it happen at Oklahoma. Yep. And so he's one of those kids that you wish well, if you hope that he lands on his feet somewhere where he gets the opportunity to be an impact player.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, he was in the hospital for an extended period of time last year with a sickness. It's not my place to say what it was or anything like that, but it's very unfortunate that happened to him because he had a chance to be a really good player at Oklahoma. And I mean, do you think he ends up at USC with Simmons? Because he was really close with Coach Simmons.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that would be on the table. I was also thinking, South Carolina could be an option as well.
Yeah, South Carolina, maybe SMU, programs like that are, or Houston. Houston might be a really good spot for him, actually. He's from the Houston area. He's from the same school. He actually went to Oklahoma because of CeeDee Lamb.
CeeDee Lamb, yep.
Like him and CeeDee are very close. Let's get to some questions here. O-line standout. Who was your O-line standout? And DB standout. Those are two questions right there off the bat by Zachary Erickson.
McCade Mathier probably impressed me the most among the offensive linemen. And that's a guy that, with what he did at Cal, you kind of were operating under the expectation that he'd be your starting left guard come the dawn of the 2022 season. And that belief is solidified for me based on what he did Saturday. He's got great drive, great punch. He can stop dudes in their tracks. Just a very abnormally strong human and very sound technique. There's a reason why he started from the time he was a true freshman at Cal. So among offensive linemen, I would say McCade Mathier probably tops the list for me. As far as the secondary goes, man, there are a lot of candidates. Kendall Dennis obviously came up with the interception. Josh Eaton played pretty well, which was refreshing to see. I thought Jaden Davis probably played better than a lot of folks gave him credit for or wanted to give him credit for. I'll give it up to Billy Bowman just because he did perform well Saturday, and he performed well at a position that he hasn't played very much in a game environment. He's coming, his background is primarily at nickel, at outside corner. And so for him to make the move to safety this spring, and from everything we're hearing, he is in the mix for a starting job. There's a very realistic chance Billy Bowman starts alongside Key Lawrence in the back end of the Sooner secondary come the fall. So I think his transition and the way that he's adapted has been really cool to see. And if he can continue that progression and roll that over into summer and ultimately fall camp, then he's got potential to be the same type of impact player that a lot of folks were figuring he would be as a true freshman that he was towards the beginning of the year. He started game one as a true freshman at nickel, was the only true freshman on either side of the ball in the week one starting lineup for Oklahoma last year. So physically, the tools are there. The skills are there. It's just a matter of unlocking them. And Billy Bowman was misused. Like, I I tripped over my tongue there. He was misused last year, and we've been over that repeatedly here on the podcast and on OU Insider Live. But I think giving that guy one positional focus, making him a safety and just saying, you know what, safety's your spot. You're going to be here and we're going to let you go. That's the right way to approach this with Billy Bowman right now. And I'm optimistic that that's going to help unlock some of the potential that he has as a defensive back.
Yeah, my defensive back standout. I was actually going to go with, I was going to say Harmon. I think that would have been the easy one because he had the interception. But
that was Kendall Dennis.
Kendall Dennis. Sorry, why do I keep saying Harmon? It's Kendall Dennis. Dadgum, 21. Duh. I kind of want to give a shout out to Justin Harrington for what he's done to come back and be a part of that and make a play. And he made more than one actually, but the one that he made that everybody noticed was where he got his helmet on the ball. Tawai Walker trying to dive into the end zone, popped it out. Ethan Downs recovered it. Red took over near the goal line. But I thought that was needed for him, I think, confidence-wise, because he was proving himself attitude-wise, building confidence, doing all the right things in practice. But for him to do that on a stage as big as that was in the spring game, I think is going to propel him to potentially cause some problems on the depth chart for some people moving forward this fall, because I think he's going to be in the rotation. I just do. I think people like what they're seeing from him. I think they love his attitude now. He's completely bought in. He's matured. He's grown up. And if he continues to do those type of things and he doesn't slip up again, this could be one of those really cool stories where people are talking about it a couple of years from now and he's in the NFL, because he has that type of talent. Long, rangy, fast. He can do it all. He just has to mentally and maturity. Been his biggest hiccups his whole career. And now that is kind of starting to come into a line, I think some big things could be in store for Justin Harrington. Offensive line wise, I'm going to go Savion Byrd. How about that, Apple? I liked what he did. I watched him a little bit and I liked what he did. I mean, I just did. So the offensive line's really hard to sit there and go, who's a standout? Because we don't know, what their steps are supposed to be, if they're supposed to combo block and then seal up to the second level. Like, we don't know what they're trying to do each and every play. So it's hard for us to sit there and grade and say those type of things. I thought Wanya Morris was decent. I thought the TCU Geyer, I thought he moved really well. Guyton. I thought he moved really well. I mean, I think, he's a player that has some potential for Oklahoma at tackle. He's going to have to add some strength. He's going to have to put on a little bit more weight. But I think at the end of the day, he could be a player that really helps Oklahoma depth-wise, and then eventually works himself into being a starter later on in his career, and could be. I think he has all conference potential if he can do the right things and build the strength up, because athletically he's got it.
He looks like a basketball player.
He does. 100%. Now, the other question everybody's asking about, what happened with Trey Wisner? And you can go in what happened. I'll go in with the I talked to some people on the way down here, the Oklahoma stance on things right now, if you want to go in on that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is this was as out of the blue as any commitment we've seen thus far in the 2023 cycle. And as we mentioned on the OU Insider VIP boards, this was one that Oklahoma had been in the driver's seat in for upwards of a year. I mean, the Sooners had long been the favorite for Wisner, and it seemed like if there was a school that was maybe going to spoil the party for Oklahoma, Texas A&M was probably the logical candidate. And all along, we'd been operating under the impression, based on what we'd been repeatedly told, that his commitment date was going to be in October on his mom's birthday during his senior year, and nothing was going to happen until then. And moreover, If you follow his mom on social media, if you've seen some of the posts that she's made, some of the quotes she's given to reporters over the past few months, it's very clear that OU is a place she's comfortable with her son going to, and has a ton of respect for DeMarco Murray. The Wisners had visited campus multiple times. There was a lot of belief there that Oklahoma had an insurmountable lead in Wisner's recruitment. And then, boom, all of a sudden, he shows up to Texas's spring game. He's committed later that evening. So, yeah, it took everybody by surprise. And Wisner's a kid that has never been super forthcoming with the details of his recruitment. He doesn't talk a whole lot, and some kids are just like that. So, will we ever get a completely clear answer as to why it all happened the way that it did? Maybe not, but make no mistake, there is going to be, I think, here's what I'll say. I don't think this recruitment is over and done. That doesn't necessarily mean he doesn't sign with Texas at the end of the day, but I don't think we've heard the last from Trey Wisner's recruitment.
Well, yeah. Just speaking to sources, I was on the phone on the way down here, just getting caught up on a few things. And one of them told me, said, look, there's people around him that want him in Norman. And there are people at Oklahoma that have worked that type of situation before and got a running back that was committed to Texas for a long period of time that didn't look like they were open to a whole lot, and they ended up flipping and going elsewhere. So that's happened twice actually with that coach. So we'll continue to watch that. I don't think DeMarco Murray by any stretch of the imagination is going to, wave the white flag there. And I think he's going to continue to recruit Wisner and see where it goes from there. I know there's a question people are asking about, or this Brandon guy was asking about my question about Insidious and how it can be construed as faith-based characteristic. When I asked Coach Venables that, and you can go, it's kind of at the end of the tail end of the questions with, and I totally bro, have you ever, where you were thinking of a word and you start talking and you're trying to get that question out and the word that you were trying to use just completely slipped your mind? Insidious is a word that I don't use on an everyday basis. And what happened was Ethan Downs used it talking about the word of the day and how that was, and he brought faith into it. You have to go watch Ethan Downs's answer in how he used Insidious. And so that's where that stemmed from, and why I asked, how did you get the faith base in that, and where did you come up with that, was where I was basically asking Coach Venables, and how does that work into your everyday life with the team inside the locker room, all that type of stuff is what I was getting at. And I stumbled over my words and all that stuff trying to ask it, because I was trying to think of the word that Ethan used. And finally, Dean Blevins, of all people, and thank you, Dean, for doing that, he goes, I think you're talking about when he said Insidious. And I was like, that's it. That's the word. And finally, when I said that, Venables, and he goes on this 5-minute dialogue over the word Insidious and how they use certain things for building the characteristic and the program up from a ground level, from a grassroots perspective, whether it's the standard, whether it's Insidious, not letting things build up. Insidious is more like where things, you don't see them, you totally turn your cheek to things that probably should be taken care of inside the locker room, and they build up to bigger and worse things, and it can basically be like a vine and take over your whole locker room. And that's where that question came from. And because Ethan used several Bible verses to back it up on why Insidious behavior is so bad for the locker room and how it used to be that way. And he even called that, he said it used to be that way in the locker room until this new staff got here, kind of in a roundabout way is what he was saying. And so I wanted to ask, because where did y'all come up with this, and how does that help you guys on an everyday basis stop, that type of behavior. And Venables took it from there and went on his, he rode with it and then went on a long diatribe of words and sentences that you guys can go watch with the answer. It was great. It was a really good answer. I've had a lot of people actually tagging me about it and say that was their favorite thing about the whole interview. The post-game interview was him talking about that, because you got to see the behind the scenes of how they build the program, what that soul missions for, all that type of stuff. It was a really cool deal. I guess finally, let's answer one or two more questions here, Parker. Somebody asked if Cole Adams is officially off the OU board now. I don't know.
Definitely not.
No,
definitely not.
He, the OU's going to see him in the spring, and he fully expects Oklahoma to offer when they see him in the spring, because that's what he got from when he took a visit to Oklahoma. And now Oklahoma and Cole Adams are on the same page. They weren't on the same page for a long time, and now they seem to be on the same page. And if Oklahoma does extend an offer, I think they've positioned themselves a lot better now. How about you?
No, I agree. And I'm not concerned right now, and I don't think anybody should be concerned that Oklahoma is going to run out of spots at the wide receiver position either, because with how thin they are right now in that wide receiver core, and they're going to add Gavin Freeman and Davion Wool into that room, sure, come the summer. But with only 8 scholarship receivers right now, you can expect that they'll dip into the portal for a guy or two, but they're going to need reinforcements next year. They will. And so this could be a class where Oklahoma takes 4 or 5 wide receivers. And so if you're looking at what they've already got on the board, Ashton Kozart's solidly committed. The Sooners are trending well for Mikhail Harrison-Pilot. Then the question becomes, all right, well, who else is there? And Cole Adams is a name that I would put near the top of the list right now.
Yeah. And people are asking, obviously, in the same aspect, what about Petaway and Anthony Evans? And I can touch on Anthony Evans because I've been dealing with him quite a bit. Look, he's trying to come back for the champion barbecue. There is a lot of people that believe Anthony Evans and Oklahoma are in a good spot. And if that is the case, it is going to be interesting to see who the first come first serve is for that slot position, because you got Michael Harrison-Pilot, you've got Cole Adams, you got Petaway, you've got several players that are speed demons, and Dylan Edwards. But Dylan Edwards, I'm going to put underneath more of a running back now than wide receiver. Would you agree with that?
Yes,
it used to be slot, like they were looking at him as slot. Now they've kind of ventured him over into the running back kind of combo position. So we'll see. I think that's going to be interesting. And people are asking about DJ Lagway if Oklahoma leads. No, they don't lead for him. But if Oklahoma does, in fact, I offer 2024 5-star Michael Hawkins, the OU legacy player that grew up loving Oklahoma and is not shy saying if Oklahoma offers, that one could be done pretty quick. So, yes, and that's my gut feeling on that one. So I could be wrong, I wouldn't be the first or last. So, but I have a gut feeling like Oklahoma offers Michael Hawkins Jr. that one could be done really quickly. And to be honest, I don't know that he wouldn't be. He's going to attract a lot of players, especially in the state of Texas.
Yes, he will.
Area.
That dude can play some ball.
Anyways, one last question here, and I'll let you talk about Adebawore. Obviously wasn't at the spring game, but kind of touch on him before we close this thing out.
Yeah, so PJ Adebawore was at Iowa this past weekend. It was a visit that he'd had set for some time. And look, here's the reality with PJ. He wants to go somewhere where he feels the love. And as of right now, he's got 4 schools that have kind of elevated themselves above the rest: Oklahoma, Georgia, Iowa, and Arkansas. He's already visited the first 3. He'll be at Arkansas this coming weekend. And so that will be one that we continue to monitor very closely, because at the end of the day, Oklahoma has what none of those 3 other programs have right now, which is a combination of prestige and proximity. Georgia sounds great in theory, but for PJ, he wants to be somewhere, ideally, where his parents can come watch him play on a regular basis. And so going to school to a place like Athens might not be as appealing as somewhere like Iowa City or Fayetteville or Norman. So I tend to believe he's going to stay close to home, and there are people around him that believe that as well. In talking to PJ, it's very clear that the relationships are the best at Oklahoma right now. And that should be an encouragement to all Sooners fans with regard to their recruitment of Atabare, is the fact that Miguel Chavis and Brent Venables have done a fantastic job making him feel valued and making him feel like he has a place and a home at Oklahoma. He will be back in Norman for an official visit over the summer, and I don't anticipate that this is going to take much longer than 3-4 more months. You remember when I said earlier, I think the Sooners will have more commits than you can count on one hand in the months of June and July. PJ's probably about on that timeline, so he may be on that list.
You think? Do you think he's done by the end of June, potentially?
End of June, maybe. End of July, definitely, I would say.
Okay. I guess finally I'll just close this one out. People keep asking about Job. He's actually supposed to call me here in like 15 minutes. So hopefully we'll have something tomorrow. So he's at a basketball banquet right now. So if we can get some information on that, it doesn't matter. Like, I'll get information on him. Like, he and I talk several times a week. No problem. So if I don't get it tonight, I'll definitely get it in the next few days, or I'll just go by his school on my way back and talk with him. So we'll find some information out here over the next few days on by Joe, like Georgia, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma. Those are going to be the 4 right now that really stand out to him. He loves it. He's going to take an official to Oklahoma. That is happening. We'll just leave it at that, and we'll see where it goes from there. I know he did really enjoy the spring game. That I can tell you. So, anyways, that is going.
Let me add one more thing that I forgot to touch on in the discourse surrounding PJ Atabare. For those that like length, PJ Atabare's got a measured wingspan north of 7 feet. So yeah. Yep. That's part of the reason crazy. You saw him jump so far up the rankings last week.
Yeah, him and Job might be the 2 longest players in the nation, to be honest with you. I don't think
there's a very good chance.
Question. Yeah. And Oklahoma can end up with both. Very good chance. So, look, the NIL stuff, I know we haven't touched on that because there's just a lot of stuff going on there that I don't even know what to say. I think they're going to have to change the name to it. That I do know at this juncture. We'll see how that goes, but I think there's more things coming down the line as far as NIL goes. So I don't think this is going to be the only NIL thing that OU fans have at their disposal to be able to help the program if they want to. So just be on the lookout for all that type of stuff. So finally, Jacoby Johnson, yes, he made it in, and I will have an update there. Pretty good one too. So we'll get that on OU Insider VIP. You guys will like that. I like where Oklahoma stands there at the end of the day. But that's going to do it for this edition of the OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners YouTube Live. If you're not a member right now, 60% off, $42 gets you a year. We're going to, all these type of questions you guys ask us, we drop notes and answer questions on that type of stuff 24/7 on OU Insider, OU 247, literally. Uh, so if you like what you're seeing here, you're going to get 1,000 times more of this information on OU Insider. Plus, you get to talk like you guys do right down here in the chat. Man, think about, I don't know, close to 10,000 of you guys on one VIP place. So, I mean, it's fun. It's fun. We have fun. You guys have fun. We enjoy the questions. We enjoy dropping notes. I enjoy going out and doing what I'm going to do tomorrow, going out and seeing all these players, getting you guys more interviews and more information. We enjoy bringing all the VIP background to you guys. Parker will be out and about here in the next few weeks as well. So we're going to have a ton of stuff during the eval period for you guys. I'll be in Georgia. I'll be in Florida. I'll be in Oklahoma. I'll be in Texas. Parker will be in Kansas City, Missouri area, Nebraska. Then he'll be back down in Oklahoma as well. So we're going to have you guys covered all across the nation. If Oklahoma's offered them, chances are we're going to be in front of them over the next 6 months. And we're going to have information for you guys that nobody else will, because we're going to be traveling and getting that information for you guys. So that's what makes OU Insider awesome. Daily notes for you guys, team and recruiting, up to date as best as you can get. Plus, we have the best national guys, Steve Wiltfong, Brandon Huffman, Greg Biggins, Brian Doan, Andrew Ivins, Alan True. I could go on and on and on and on and on about how awesome our national guys are. And they come and bring notes every day to you guys as well on OU Insider. So whether it's team notes, whether it's recruiting notes, we've got you guys covered at OU Insider, 60% off, usually about $108 to sign up. It's only $42 right now through next Monday because of the NFL draft. And also Wednesday is a free day. Everybody can go for free, whether you're a member or not. You can view OU Insider for free for one day, 24 hours. We're giving y'all a fan appreciation day. So make sure you guys jump on that and you get to see what you're missing. And I think you'll want to sign up because you'll still be able to sign up 60% off during that free day. So we hope to see you guys there. If you don't want to do a whole year, it's $1 for the first month, $9.95 afterwards. We got a OU Insider Under the Visor Sooners post game podcast that's up right now on iTunes, Spotify, Megaphone, Google Play, wherever you can find your podcast. It's up also up on YouTube. So make sure you get caught up on that. It's our post game stuff. It's long, it's in depth. We've got a lot of great information for you guys there that isn't on this as well. So, and we're going to have another podcast we're going to be recording this week. So we hope you guys view that one as well and listen. So that's going to do it for Parker Thune. My name is Brandon Drumm. Thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the OU Insider Under the Visor YouTube Live. You guys have a blessed day.